Hello gorgeous peeps, I'm Chris from TechSpert and say hello to Motorola's fresh new 2020 flagship smartphone, the Motorola Edge. Now the Edge promises a proper premium flagship style experience, but for the sum of just 550 quid, which is of course 50 quid cheaper than the OnePlus 8 and a buttload less expensive than the likes of the Samsungs and the iPhones of the world. It's going to be hitting the UK in early June. You'll be able to buy it from the likes of Amazon and direct from Motorola, and I'm going to give it a full unboxing and an in-depth tour right now of that hardware and that software so you know exactly what to expect if you decide to throw your money Moto's way. And if you want to grab the Motorola Edge direct from a provider here in the UK, you can grab it from O2. I think I forgot to do all that usual YouTube governance, didn't I? Please box subscribe, ding that notifications bell, very much appreciated, guys. So there's the actual Motorola Edge itself. Let's just chuck that aside and see what else you get in this lovely black box. So you get, of course, the obligatory condom case, which now comes bundled with pretty much every smartphone out there, which is definitely great. If you want to keep your phone pristine, you don't mind it looking a bit like a prophylactic, then there you go, job done. Got the usual readme shenanigans. You got a 3-pin plug, of course, naturally, to charge up the Motorola Edge. You got your Type-C USB cable to slip into that bad boy. And looky here, you even get some proper wired headphones, which you can stick in there. Actual 3.5mm efforts, not Type-C headphones, which are becoming increasingly common, of course. And they actually look all right. They should definitely do you just as a spare pair, which you can shove in the old backpack, just in case your Bluetooth pair runs out of juice or something. Thought you could escape me, did you? A little pokey pin device to actually get your SIM in there, cunningly hidden amongst the manuals and the other guff that you might otherwise ignore. So there you have it. That's the highly exciting contents of the Motorola Edge box. And now, let's check out the phone. And there you have it. It's my first glimpse of the Motorola Edge in the flesh. And this is the Solar Black model, which is basically just all black. In some regions, you'll also be able to grab it in an almost as dark midnight magenta, but in the UK, it just seems to be the Solar Black on offer. And this thing is so damn dark. I'm actually really struggling to get it on camera to show up any of the sort of the finer detailings of it. I would say that Motorola is catering for goths as well, but actually, as it catches the light, it does throw off a kind of a rainbow hue, which you can hopefully sort of make out there. Just the occasional bit of blue, green, red. Let me tell you, this camera focus is having a whale of a time trying to pick up this thing. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm even just staring at it, I'm going kind of cross-eyed. It's already proven itself a bit of a smudge magnet as well. As you can see there, I'm literally just touching it. I'm a little bit sweaty because it's quite warm in the studio today, but yeah, look at that fingerprint magnet. And the Moto Edge definitely feels quite light, certainly lighter than a lot of other smartphones that I've tested out recently. And apparently the reason for that is because it's actually got a plastic back instead of glass, and it certainly doesn't feel quite as solid. As you can see there, it's got a little bit of flex to it, which you would not expect from a glass handset. Although around front, apparently it is Gorilla Glass 5, so at least that should prove reasonably hardy. I'm just a little bit worried that that plastic back is going to get scratched up rather easily, which of course I will be fully testing out for my in-depth review. But I've got to say, I do love the way that front end sort of curves nicely around the edges of the phone and then comes to meet the back end as well. It almost looks like a seamless curve from front to back, like one piece of glass, but there is a narrow groove there where the glass of the display meets the plastic back end. And of course, while the likes of the OnePlus 8 are now fully IP rated for water and dust resistance, unfortunately the Motorola Edge is merely water repellent, so hopefully it should be fine in a downpour, but I certainly wouldn't go taking it into the bath or the shower or anything like that with you. Anyway, it looks like we've got juice in the tanks. Let's get the Motorola Edge all set up and we'll take a full-on tour of the rest of the phone. So I'm going to slap my personal SIM in the Motorola Edge to use it as my full-time smartphone ahead of my review. As you can see there, just a single SIM slot, not dual SIM, unfortunately. But you do have a micro SD memory card slot. You can slot memory cards up to 1 terabyte in size inside this bad boy to expand that 128 gigs of storage. Plenty of room for all of your Netflix downloads, your music, your naughty pics. We don't judge. Now, of course, mostly used to having these Motorola smartphones have a fingerprint sensor around the back end of the device, actually built into that Motorola logo, whereas it's actually an in-display sensor here on the Motorola Edge. So just busy setting up my print. Hopefully this will be nice and responsive and accurate. And there we have it, all set up and we are ready to rock. Here on the Motorola Edge, which as you can see lives up to its name, that display is curving quite nicely around those edges, so it is a proper front filling experience. Look at that, only the dinkiest little bezels above and below, so it certainly looks like a premium flagship phone, even if it does have that plastic arse end. I'm just hoping it's smart enough to realise you're not actually poking the edges of the display when you're clutching it quite tight, which is a problem that I had with the TCL 10 Pro. Now, here's of course Android 10, the latest, freshest version of Android here on the Motorola Edge, as you would kind of hope and expect from a flagship smartphone. So of course you've got the Discover feed, all the usual shenanigans. It's very stock version of Android as you usually get with Motorola. Of course, made a few little tweaks here and there. If you sort of dive under the surface, you will spot a couple. So for instance, dive on into the security section and you'll see you do have a proper face unlock action. So let's get this all set up. Yep, all good. Align your face. Only partial face detected. That's a bit harsh. So if you want to unlock your smartphone, you've got a couple of options. Of course, you've got that in-display fingerprint sensor, which I set up earlier. Seems nice and accurate and responsive. And you've also got that face unlock. All you need to do is pick up your smartphone, front-facing camera will start scanning for your mug. And there we go. So far, perhaps doesn't seem the most responsive. Oh, hang on, there we go, yep. But I'll be fully testing that out to see how it works in everyday life. And that curvy edge-to-edge screen isn't just for looks either. Motorola has made the most of it with a variety of features. So for instance, you've got edge lights, notification light feature, where the edges just light up to say that something is waiting your attention. And it doesn't look like you can set up for precise notifications, so particular apps or anything, but basically incoming calls, alarms, or all app notifications by the looks of it rather than individuals. You can also change the brightness levels, only show when the screen is facing down, etc. And you can also set it so that feature turns off at night as well, which is pretty handy if you're trying to get a bit of kip. You don't want your smartphone flashing at you, that's for damn sure. Unfortunately, I'm really trying very hard to get that edge lighting to work to demonstrate to you guys, and it's not having any of it, whether the screen is on or off or whatever app is getting notifications is just not doing it. So yeah, leave that one with me, and again, hopefully for the full review I'll be able to show that off. And then also here on the Motorola Edge, you've got the Edge Touch. You got the touch. Oh my god, that was awful scene. Which basically mimics Samsung's Edge panels to make use of that spangly curved screen. And with this feature active, you get this funky little action bar, which you can then drag from one edge of the display to the other, position it exactly where you want it. Then with this active, you can swipe in and you will open up a bunch of shortcuts, which as you can see there, for some of your favorite apps and various tools like a ruler, if you need to measure something urgently. But of course, you've got full control over exactly what pops up in there, so you can get rid of that ruler if you don't need to do any urgent measurements ever. Get rid of some other bits, and then pop up fast shortcuts to the likes of a search within Deezer, starting a new dock within Docs. And you can also set up shortcuts to some of your favorite contacts in there as well, and as you can see, you can have up to 6 shortcuts in all. And using that edge bar thingy, you can also, for instance, swipe down in order to access your notifications. You can swipe up in order to access all of your recent apps, but then you've got full gesture navigation on here anyway, so I'm not really sure what the point of that would be, especially as you can just swipe down from anywhere on the screen to pull down your notifications too. And of course, this wouldn't be a Motorola smartphone, or certainly not a flagship, without that Moto Experiences app as well. So of course, you've got the Moto Action section, which adds a bunch of gesture support, including the excellent fast torch one. Oh, that's not so good on the arthritic wrists, which basically just quickly loads up the camera app with a quick double twist like so. One feature that does happen to be missing from there, however, is the one-handed mode, which is a bit of a surprise. That is a real shame, because one-handed action is always definitely good. And you've got the Moto Game Time feature on here as well, a relatively new one. I played around with it on the Moto G8 Power Lite, I think it was, one of those handsets anyway. This will handily turn off some features like that edge display while you're gaming, so you don't accidentally trigger them. You can disable the adaptive brightness to keep everything nice and bright at all times, and more usefully as well, blocking notifications and calls so you are not disturbed in the middle of a frantic PUBG session. And Motorola in the past hasn't been one of the best around as far as updates are concerned. It has promised at least one Android update for the Motorola Edge, not quite as good as some who offer at least 2, so for instance likes of Nokia, but they do say they then reassess later on, so hopefully the Motorola Edge, being the flagship, will also get an update to Android 12 next year. And you've got all the other features you'd expect on there, like NFC, dual band Wi-Fi support, all that kind of shenanigans again, which you would expect from a flagship. And let's check out that 6.7-inch Endless Edge OLED display in a bit more detail. So as you can see, obviously it curves around both sides of the phone, so it gives that glorious full view experience when you are checking out a movie, TV show, whatever you fancy. Definitely getting some very OnePlus 8 vibes from this thing, especially with the dinky little pinhole camera down here in the corner. Thankfully, it doesn't intrude very much at all, as you can see there when you are kicking back with some Netflix or whatever. You got a full HD resolution, so far everything seems to be nice and crisp on there, despite the fact that it isn't a full Quad HD panel. And the colour reproduction looks nice and natural when you're kicking back with a show on Netflix or whatever. When you are indulging in a bit of geeky anime action as well, those nice vibrant colours really punching, really poppy, shining through, lovely stuff. I'll definitely be smashing my way through a good bit of Crunchyroll on this thing. And if you're not a fan of that super vibrancy, you can just dial down the colour reproduction to a more natural, sedate effort instead as well, if you're a bit boring. You've got HDR10 support on here as well, and you can also play around with the refresh rate. As you see, it's on auto mode by default, but you can bump it all the way up to 90 Hz permanently if you want that super silky smooth experience non-stop. And more good news for media fans, because it's a stereo speaker setup here on the Motorola Edge. And let's just give them a quick testing out.
And an in-depth tour of all of the hardware and software so you know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, that's certainly got a hell of a kick on that top volume. You'll be able to easily make yourself heard no matter where you roam. Certainly seriously piss off everyone on your bus or train or whatever once people start actually using public transport again. You've got Bluetooth 5.1 support for your wireless connections as well, and a proper headphone jack down below, of course, for a bit of non-wireless connections. Hooray! Now, powering the Motorola Edge is Qualcomm's Snapdragon 765 chipset, not the super premium 865. That would have bumped up the price considerably, no doubt. Backed by 6 gigs of DDR4 RAM. No DDR5, which is a bit of a shame, but hey ho. So for any stats lovers out there, here's the benchmark scores on Geekbench 5. As you can see, obviously not as high as a lot of flagship smartphones that rock the latest 865 chipset, but the 765 backed by 6 gigs of RAM should be able to blast through Android titles like PUBG, Fortnite, all that kind of stuff on high detail levels, no problem whatsoever. The 765 was made for gaming, just at a more affordable price point. And you still have full 5G support here on the Edge as well, because it's actually built, the modem is built into that chipset. You don't have to supply it separately like you do with the 865, so again, that helps to cut costs. But as ever, stay tuned for my in-depth Motorola Edge review for a proper look at the performance, if there are any little stutters or issues or anything like that. See if I managed to get my ass handed to me by school children as usual. As for the battery tech, well, it's a 4,500 milliamp cell in there, so a reasonable size, hopefully should last you a full day on a single charge. And you do have 18 watt turbo power wide charging in there, not particularly special considering 35 watt is pretty much the standard these days, even for mid-ranges, but we'll see how the wee bugger fares with a good bit of everyday use. And now once again we play the game of, can my camera actually focus on the Motorola Edge, as we turn it over and take a gander at the camera setup. And it's actually a triple lens arrangement here on the back. You get a 64 megapixel primary lens, pretty standard these days, f1.8 aperture, and that's backed by an 8 megapixel telephoto lens offering a 2x optical zoom, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide angle lens which also doubles as a kind of macro lens. And today's willing camera subject is a creepily realistic doll thing that I swear one day is going to come to life and murder me in my sleep. Now what you get here is the standard Motorola camera app, which is nice and easy to use despite having a fair number of features packed in there. So of course you're in your auto mode as you start up the app. You can swap between that and the pro mode with a quick tap up here. And as you see, this just brings up a whole bunch of manual controls, including ISO levels, white balance, etc, etc. You can shoot in standard JPEG or RAW, or both at once. And at any point, of course, you can swap between the 64 megapixel primary lens and that telephoto lens, giving you the 2x optical zoom, get a real close-up view of those creepy, sinister features, which are going to come to life at any moment. And it goes that ultra-wide angle lens as well for a more pulled-out view. Now, even though it's a 64 megapixel primary lens, as you can see that it shoots at 16 megapixel resolution by default, using a good bit of 4-in-1 pixel binning just to help brighten up the shot a bit. If you do want to shoot at full 64 megapixel resolution, there is a feature for that though. Just give that a quick tap and boom, full 64 meg. So if you're going to be shooting something to be blown up onto a big telly screen or a poster or something, that'll do your job. You can swap to video mode with a quick tap here. As you see, you've got the ultra steady mode, which is handy if you're walking and shooting at the same time. And you can shoot up to 4K Ultra HD resolution footage, although sadly you cannot do so at 60 frames per second. And of course, you tap here, you've got a whole bonus feature selection that you can play around with. So for instance, the likes of the spot color mode, a Motorola staple, night vision, which can take some nice brighter shots when it's a low light action. You've got your macro mode, which I still think is utterly pointless. It goes a good bit of portrait action as well, which shoots a nice bit of bokeh effect. It doesn't look like you've actually got any studio effects here actually on the Motorola Edge, which you normally do on the mid-range Motorola's. So that's a bit weird, but you can play around with the bokeh effect anyway. And then if we swap around to that 25 megapixel front facing camera, yeah, got it. As you can see there, of course, you've got full portrait mode access there as well, so you can shoot yourself a lovely portrait shot, blur out the background. Otherwise you can just shoot your standard shot. Do you actually have full pro controls for that selfie camera as well? You do, lovely stuff. And you can shoot up to full HD resolution video as well, I believe, of your gorgeous mug. Let's check that out. Yeah, full HD. I will of course be fully testing out the Motorola Edge's camera for my in-depth review, along with the battery life, performance, everything else that you need to know. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you pork subscribe, ding that notifications bell and all that claptrap to be the first to see when that goes live. And please do let us know your thoughts thoughts down in the comments below. As you can see, a respectable little flagship smartphone for that sort of price point if you don't want to pay top dollar for the likes of a Samsung and iPhone. Of course, it will have strong competition from the likes of the Nokia 8.3 5G, the Realme X50 5G, and a few other handsets that are around that sort of mid-range price point but offer a very premium experience. As always, have a lovely rest of the week and catch you soon. Bye!